U.S. President Donald Trump claims American military strikes sunk 9 Iranian naval vessels and largely destroyed Iran's naval headquarters. Posting on his Truth social account, Trump said some of the ships were relatively large and important and vowed to target the rest, warning that they will soon be floating at the bottom of the sea. Trump added in a tone mixing boast and irony that aside from the attacks, their navy is doing very well. No independent verification of the strike's impact has been reported. And for more on this, I'm now joined by our senior international correspondent and anchor, Afua Hagan. Also joining us to discuss this is a geopolitics analyst, Yemi Fajemisin. Afua, what is the stated objective of the US-led strikes on Iran? How has the campaign evolved into its third consecutive day?
These strikes are broadening. You mentioned there the strikes in Lebanon as well. So the US presented the first day of strikes, as you will, as defensive and preventative. That was aimed at eliminating imminent threats from Iran and degrading their capabilities. And then into the second day, the operation broadened. The Washington Post saying that US Central Command struck over 1,000 targets. And now into day 3, we have the cycle of action and retaliation. And of course, let's not forget that throughout this, we do have Iran retaliating to all these strikes that the Americans are making. So Iran striking US bases in Oman, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, and striking a British base in Cyprus as well. And so we're in this third day of this war, if you will, of this conflict. And the objective of the United States remains the same, that it's all about targeting Iran and targeting those imminent threats. And like I said, we have this cycle now of action and retaliation.
All right. Let me ask Yemi this question. Now, with Israel and Hezbollah exchanging deadly strikes, how likely is this conflict to escalate into a broader regional war in the Middle East?
Expected that Hezbollah is going to respond this way because Hezbollah, they see Ayatollah Khamenei as their divine leader. So not to respond will look a bit awkward. So I think it's kind of expected that they're going to respond this way. The wider issue, though, rests with the response of the President Trump to the Iran, the strikes itself, which is a bit of a complicated issue because what they're saying now is the Americans clearly want a regime change. They say that's their objective. However, we don't know how that's going to turn out because they're expecting the Iranians to take up to the streets. And one of the reasons why I think that's not happened yet is because Iran is very complicated. There's a reason why many US presidents have not done this in ages. They've contemplated it. And Iran is a country of 90 million people. About half of that 90 million supports the regime of the Khamenei regime. Another half probably don't even support that. So we have this complexity around Iran, and many Iranian population are quite young. Because of that, they understand their history. And when I say they understand their history, they understood the moment where the UK and the US toppled their prime minister back then and installed the Shah of Iran. So on one hand, part of the population actually don't like the Khamenei regime. At the same time, they don't trust the Western countries as well. Because when President Trump is saying they want a regime change, but we don't know their plan towards that regime change. And things like this could cause a bit of chaos. We should all remember the Libya situation as well. Iran doesn't even have a clear opposition at hand. Now we're saying this, we're seeing news that America said they eliminated 48 of their leaders. So if you do that, who's going to be the next people to negotiate with? It could be somebody even as worse, more than worse than Khamenei. It could be somebody moderate. So we're walking on a very dangerous path now. So there's complexity around all these things. Only time will tell how it's all going to play out.
All right. Let me come back to Afua now. Tehran has publicly declared that it will not negotiate with the United States. What conditions are Iranian leaders setting, if any, for potential diplomatic engagement?
I think at the moment, Tehran said they won't negotiate with the United States while they feel that while they are under attack, right? So at the moment, whilst the United States is in this conflict, is in this offensive against Iran, there will be no talks because they feel that there will be talks under coercion. So at the moment, there is no room for negotiation. But let's remember that this time last week, Blessings, you and I were talking about the fact that the United States and Iran were round the table in Geneva. The talks were going on about Iran and their nuclear weapons and disarming and enrichment issues that the United States were very concerned about. Talks were happening this time last week. Those talks clearly broke down, and here we are. But coercion won't be the way to get Tehran to the table. The United States, yes, putting pressure on with weapons, also with sanctions. I think, like my colleague so rightly said, at the moment, we have no idea who is going to be the new Ayatollah. Or the new Ayatollah could already be installed and we just don't know who that is. Let's remember that Iran is going to be very much prepared for this moment, have been prepared, will be prepared for this moment. You know, the amount of people that they have to come behind to fill in these positions runs very deep. The person who may take his job may not be open to any kind of negotiation with the United States. We could have a more hardline leader, we could have a more moderate leader. But whilst Iran is being bombed by the United States in this way, there is going to be no room for negotiation. I think it will only be when when the United States says our offensive is over, that potentially they could come back to the table.
All right, let me come back to Yemi now. Is there a real possibility of a conflict destabilizing countries that actually host African migrants? And what could be the long-term political implications for the continent?
Well, I'm not aware personally of, because we know what Iran does best. They export violence. They're expert in exporting violence and having proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I don't know if they have any strong foothold in Africa as opposed to their any share militia. I suspect they may have militia around Somalia, the Horn of Africa. That's a possibility there. So, but in the broader sense, in terms of Africa, one thing that Africa could gain economically will be the price in oil. The price in oil is going to obviously change. So oil-producing countries like Nigeria could benefit from that. But in terms of security, it could escalate. No one knows what the Iranian regime is going to look like. It could be something where the Somalian militia there, the Al-Shabaab, may be taking advantage of these things. One thing that is actually important here to note as well is people smugglers are going to exploit this situation. So we're going to have a case of migration issues even across the world. The Europeans will be worried as well. Africans will be worried as well, because there's going to be people smugglers taking advantage of all this, exploiting this situation for their own gain. But one thing I need to stress is Iran, what they're doing now is that they're expanding their bombing campaigns to all other Gulf region. And the reason why they're doing that is because they think if they do that, they can force all these people, all these countries to talk to America to back down. Why they are making that kind of policy, no one knows, because it doesn't make sense to me to keep creating enemies by bombing your neighbors in order to force them to talk to the American government. But in terms of Africa, no one knows. The only group I know that is kind of sympathetic to the Iranian regime is around the Horn of Africa, which is Al-Shabaab group in Somalia. So time will tell how it's going to all play out.
Okay, Afua, the conflict has now spilled into Lebanon with Israeli strikes on Hezbollah, and at least 31 people have been killed. What are the risks of this escalating into a full-blown Israel and Hezbollah war?
So when it comes to Israel and Hezbollah, that has been a proxy war that has been going on for so long. In terms of this spreading out into the rest of the Middle East and that into a growing war, that is a huge risk at the moment. We have already seen the US targets being hit across different countries, Oman, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait as well. I think if we continue down this path, if the United States continues down this path, and Israel continues down this path also, striking targets in Hezbollah, and they will want to take out their proxies across the region, then yes, we are at every risk of the spreading into a full-blown conflict with civilian displacement. You've got evacuation warnings all the time as well. Lebanon's internal politics as well can become a flashpoint. Lebanese leaders have openly criticized Hezbollah for dragging the country into this conflict. And so, yes, there is a risk that this could spill over. Whilst the US and whilst Israel are taking advantage of this moment, then yes, it could draw in the rest of the countries around the Middle East. Absolutely.
All right, Afua, Hagan and Yemi, thank you so much for lending your voices to this conversation, and definitely we're coming back to have it. We're not done yet, but we want to go on a quick break. We're still live on the 12 Report. We're going to break now. When we come back, this conversation and many more continue. Stay with us. Well, News Central is still closely following the Middle East tensions, and discussing this, I am still joined by senior international correspondent and anchor Afua Hagan, and of course, we also have a geopolitics analyst, Yemi Fajemisin, who has been here and has been doing justice to this conversation. Yemi, let me come to you with my next question. Could the involvement of American forces increase the likelihood of the war drawing in more global powers?
Yeah, thank you for that. Personally, I don't think so. And why did I say that? We must remember that Trump didn't even get approval from the U.S. Congress before doing this. So there's a lot of debates going on in America as well. Number one, Americans are saying Trump didn't prepare the American public for this war. And second, American Congress are saying Trump needs approval before engaging in any kind of war. And number three, there was no UN legal backing for the war as well. So if we get to a situation where there are U.S. Soldiers' bodies coming back home with U.S. flags, that could be of a tension for Trump as well at home domestically. And also we know that China kind of supports Iran publicly. I wouldn't say China come out publicly to say that, but on the background, China is sympathetic to the cause of Iran. Also, we know Iran also supplies Vladimir Putin all his drones to attack Ukraine. So there's a Russia and Iran. So Russia and China behind the scenes supports Iran. So I don't see any global power joining the war. What global power probably will be looking at to kind of de-escalate issue and do a bit of mediations behind the scenes, not to make things much more complicated.
Okay, let me come back to Afua now. What has the UK government under Prime Minister, or why rather, has the UK government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to let the US use British military bases for defensive strikes targeting Iranian missile sites?
Well, yes. So this announcement came earlier or over the weekend that the UK was going to allow the United States to use its defense bases across the world to launch this attack on Iran. Now, the United Kingdom has been very adamant to say that they did not allow the United States to use their bases in that initial wave, but this decision has come now in a defensive posture because now you have targets or US bases being targeted, and near those US bases you have UK citizens, for instance, in the United Arab Emirates. So now they're coming from a defensive posture and saying that because you have these targets being hit, it's now in the interest of the United Kingdom to stand with the United States and to help protect British interests abroad, essentially. And that's what they're saying. So they're already in this defensive posture. There's this defensive self-defensive posture rather that they are taking to be able to justify this. They've explicitly explained the legality framing around this in collective self-defense and international law, and because it was an allied request, that's why they could do that. Let's also remember that you had a UK base in Cyprus being hit, and that was another reason why they decided to change their tone as well. That under international law, they can stand with their allies and they can say that UK bases can be used by United States forces. So they're very keen to emphasize that they're not joining an offensive war on Iran, but they will enable limited strikes to reduce missile threat that's already landing across the region and endangering Britons. That is the line that the United Kingdom are taking.
Right. Yemi, with the UK government agreeing to let the US use British military bases for defensive strikes targeting Iranian missiles, what do you then foresee?
Right. For my eyes, I don't. It's kind of expected that Keir Starmer was going to do that because it's in a very difficult position that the UK under Keir Starmer, because they're trying to learn from history of the Iraq War when Tony Blair joined President Bush there. A lot of British public don't want to be involved in any war. However, it will be a bit awkward for Keir Starmer not to publicly say he supports what Americans are doing. So that's why they've kind of made it clear that although we're not going to do any strikes on Iran, we're out of it, but we're going to support by letting you use the UK base. So only time will tell, to be honest. I can't really know. I don't know any prediction in terms of that.
All right. Well, we want to say a big thank you to geopolitics analyst Yemi Fajemisin, and of course, our international correspondent and anchor Afua Hagan, who has been following the story and will be bringing us more updates in no time. Thank you so much.